Okay, thanks for getting back with us here. This is our last session on our communication skills. And remember from the last session that our greatest need is for significance, acceptance, sense of belonging. When somebody doesn't listen to me, I feel unimportant. My greatest need is to be important. So that's what's going to, that's my biggest button. That's your biggest button, is when somebody doesn't listen to you. And the speaker rules: keep your statement brief, talk about one issue, and state it when you did, I felt. Listener, just paraphrasing back what you heard. Okay? Now, there's something that's very important for us as Christians that I want you to remember. And it's something, Jesus made a statement, and he said, I did not come to be served. I came to serve others. And I'm a big believer that that's our calling. Our calling is to be servants, and we are to serve the other. And I believe that the main way that we serve God is by serving our mate. Now, there's one thing that if you're going to be a servant that you need to keep in mind. You can't serve as you should unless you know what the other needs. So that's where communication comes in. We all have needs, and we have to communicate about those. But the good news is, you say, well, I don't want to do that all the time. But if the man will serve his wife unconditionally, and the wife serve the husband unconditionally, then this thing will work great. Okay? You will both be excited. You will both be fulfilled. But you must be willing. You must have a heart that's willing to serve the other. Don't be like the guy. There was a lady that was seeing her psychiatrist, and her psychiatrist told her husband, said, your wife needs a hug every day. And he said, well, put me down for Tuesdays and Fridays. So you can't be like that. You're going to have to step it up. Now, some more on the speaker listener that I want to share with you now. There are two times that we know we need to talk. One is, I've been hurt, I've been upset. Okay? But there is a process that we need to go through before we do that. You know, don't speak in your anger. You stop and examine it. Okay? Now, keeping in mind that anger is an emotion God has given us that tells us that we need to stop and deal with an issue. Okay? So if I'm angry, if I'm hurt, the first thing I need to do is I need to say, why am I angry? Why am I angry? And then, if my anger is legitimate, then I can proceed. Okay? I may find out that my anger is not legitimate. Let me give you an example. Let's say that one of my boys is home, and my wife has made a big, beautiful pie, and so she gets him out a big old piece of pie and gives me a little piece of pie, and I get upset over that. I need to stop and say, okay, why am I upset? Well, I'm upset because I didn't get the biggest piece of pie. Now, I believe that would be classed under selfishness. Okay, so I don't need to do speaker listener with my wife over that. I need to confess that and say, Lord, I'm just being selfish. So I need to let that go. But let's say that I go home tonight and I find out that my neighbor has been beating his wife and kids and sent them all to the hospital. See, that anger there is legitimate, and the anger is to motivate me to do something about it. So if you're angry or upset, stop. Why am I angry? Look at your expectation. If my expectation was that my wife forgot my birthday, forgot a big event, something was really important to me, then I need to share that with her. Otherwise, I don't. Now, the other time that we need to talk, that most people let go, not everybody, but many let go, is when I'm disappointed. See, it's the same thing. I don't get disappointed unless I have first had an expectation. So it's the same process. Why am I disappointed? Well, if I go through that process and see that my expectation was reasonable, then again, I need to talk about that, because these little disappointments, again, add up. And when they get so big, again, you're going to implode or explode, one of the two. And so talk about them. Don't let them build up, and don't let them become a big issue, again, that's going to create the separation. So as issues come up, talk about them, use the speaker listener, and get that unresolved resolved, okay? Now we're going to move a little further on with the communication skills. There is a timeout provision. You know, you can have the best expectations, and of course, I tell folks this speaker listener is really simple, but it's not easy. And I say that because it's different. We're not used to talking that way, and so it's going to take some time for you to do that. But there is a timeout feature that if you sense that things aren't going the way they should, that either one of you can call a timeout. Now, don't do it this way. Well, I think you need a timeout. Okay, don't do that. Just say that, you know, I can tell things aren't going well. Why don't we take a little break here? Let's take a timeout, and we'll discuss this again in a minute. And there's some guidelines on it. If you call a timeout, don't try to talk about it any sooner than 30, 40 minutes. You need at least that much time, but don't put it off more than 24 hours, because the person that calls timeout is responsible for calling time in. But we're not going to call a permanent timeout. That's why we have the 24-hour thing on there, okay? So bring it back whenever you need to. Now, there's a word in the Bible that's used an awful lot that's very, very important, especially in communication, and that's the word humility. Again, a lot in the Bible about humility. And I really like the guys to do this, but either can. But again, if you sense that things aren't going well, that the humility says, hang on, I can tell that, you know, honey, I bet I'm not listening to you like I should. And so let's just take a little break here, and let's regroup here in a few minutes. Maybe we could even pray together about this, because I really want to hear what you're saying. I really want to understand how my behavior is affecting you, because I love you, and I want to meet your needs. And so let's get back together and deal with this. So time out, use some humility. That can go a long, long way in diffusing things. Okay, we're going to move on to filters, what we call filters. Now, a filter is anything, any barrier that there is in having a good, clear communications. And they're very simple. I'm going to cover them briefly. One type of filter is inattention. That could be hearing problems, speech problems, too much noise in the room, the TV, the kids. Sometimes just being too tired to communicate can be a filter. Then another one, filter, is emotional states, anger, sadness, happiness, so forth. See, we tend to give others more benefit when we're in a better mood. And when we're not in a good mood, we're not too good at that. And another filter is beliefs, and these can be really powerful. Beliefs and expectations can affect the way we interpret things, and we have a tendency to see in others what we expect to see, and also people tend to try to behave the way they think that other person wants them to behave, so those can be filters. And then we have different communication styles, and you have to be tolerant to in order to with the other one, because their style may be different from you. You may be that hard charger that just wants to get right down to the point, and the other one is a little more passive, and so you need to make some adjustments for that. And then other filters can be self-protection, covering up our real concerns and feelings. We do that out of fear. Things often are said in such a way as a way to protect ourselves, and it's really out of hurt and a fear of rejection. And so in dealing with filters, all kinds of filters can become a barrier to oneness and openness in what the Lord wants for us. But some basic guidelines is to take responsibility for understanding your filters. Assume filters are there. Remember that it's almost never profitable to be arguing about what was said in the past. Just deal with the here and now. and announce your filters. Just say, I'm really, really tired tonight, or, I've got a headache, or whatever it might be. So announce it so that it's out on the table and so forth. Now we're going to move to the last section, and it's a very, very important section. And it's one that we call events, issues, and hidden issues. Okay? Now, couples tend to argue over the happenings of the day. We'd call them the events of the day. An event can be anything, from a big electric bill to a bad report card from one of the kids or whatever. But events often trigger the more important issues. Okay? And you're going to see a little more of that in a minute. Now, issues are the more important things that we deal with. There's three major issues. That's the top three, and you know what they are. They are money, sex, and communication. Those are the three biggest issues that couples deal with. There are other issues, how to deal with the kids, how we're going to deal with the in-laws, and how we're going to parent, and again, there can be a lot of different issues that come up. And then that brings us to hidden issues. Now, we say hidden issues, we're not saying they're hidden, but we don't talk about them. When we have a discussion, we are not bringing these things up. We may be aware of not being cared for, but that's not what we talk about. And there are several issues that are hidden issues that I want us to look at now. And there's six of them we're going to talk about. They're power, caring, recognition, commitment, integrity, and acceptance. And these are the deeper fundamental issues that can come up with any event. You're going to see how that works here in a minute. But see, these hidden issues are too threatening to talk about. But unless we learn to communicate to where we can feel safe, that we can express these deeper hidden issues so that we can begin to deal with them safely in your relationship. And as we go through these, I want you to think about how these issues may be affecting you, and also how these issues may be affecting your mate. Okay? So the first one we're going to look at is power. Now, with power issues, it's about status and control. Okay, who's deciding what? Who's laying out the chore list and so forth? And are your needs and desires just as important as your mate's? Is your input into decision making just as important as the other, or is major decisions being made without your input? And do you feel controlled? Okay, that's about power issues. The next one is about caring, and the main theme here is to the extent to which you feel loved and cared for. Okay, does your partner's love for you seem clear? Do you feel good about that, or does it seem conditional? Okay, so that's another hidden issue. Another one is recognition. Are your activities and accomplishments recognized by your mate? Now, when we were talking about caring is about whether you feel loved and cared for. Recognition is about whether your accomplishments are recognized by your mate and whether you feel valued in who you are and what you do. So again, that's another issue. And then we have one of commitment. And this is about the long-term security of the relationship. Are you going to stay with me? Is your relationship secure? And when there's insecurity in the relationship, it's going to be coming out in all kinds of events, and that really affects a relationship. Then that brings us to integrity, and integrity is triggered when you feel challenged in who you see yourself to be. Do you ever notice how defensive you might get or upset that you might get when your mate challenges your intent or your motive in an issue? That's because your integrity has been challenged. And we don't need to be telling the other either, how they feel or think or what they intend. Almost anybody's going to get defensive when that happens. And then the last issue is about acceptance. And if you remember, this is one of the three key things that we talked about: significance, acceptance, sense of belonging. And this issue can underline all the other things. And we all have a desire for acceptance, and we're going to work for acceptance and to try to avoid rejection. And that's why we need to feel respected and connected and so forth. Now, I want to give you an example on a hidden issue, how this works, because again, this is very important that you get this. Let's say a man and his wife is out, whatever, shopping, whatever, and they run into one of his old girlfriends from high school. And you stop and exchange pleasantries, and you talk for 30 seconds, you know, how you going and everything, and you leave. Nothing to it. And you see that your wife is upset. And an argument starts. And you know that you've done nothing wrong, you've said nothing inappropriate, you didn't get her phone number, any of that. You just said, hi, how you doing, and you moved on. But again, she's upset. See, that's an event, okay? Your wife is not upset over the event. The issue is the hidden issues. She's not feeling maybe like you're as committed to her as you should be. She's feeling insecure. She's feeling like she's not cared for. That's the hidden issue that's putting fuel on the event. And couples will fight and argue over events for years. A lot of you, I've done it. You talk about the event when the event was nothing, and you get so upset and you're thinking, what's the big deal here? But see, it's not about the event. It's about these hidden issues of the 6 things that we just talked about being cared for, being committed to, being accepted, the power, control, the integrity. Those are the hidden issues that you've got to look at. And once you can understand that, and then the next time that situation might come up, then when you run into that old relationship, then you can turn to her and say, you know, I want you to know how much I love you, and I'm so glad I didn't marry them. Okay? And once you can see that and reinforce your commitment and your love for her, then the event is not going to be a big issue. But see, if you don't get to the core of this and deal with it, then you're going to become afraid to go out anywhere that you might run into an old relationship, because you know that she's just going to get upset. And so the fear is going to creep in, and the separation is going to get involved. So learn to focus on these hidden issues so that you can provide security. You know, there was an old country song, I think Garth Brooks did, about thank God for unanswered prayers, and it was about where he had prayed for a relationship and it didn't work out, but he went on to find something better. But don't say that to your wife. Don't say, thank God for unanswered prayers, because she's going to come back and say, so you was praying for her, huh? Right? Okay, so don't do that. And she's going to come back and say, well, I don't remember you praying for me. So just deal with the issue and don't get into that. So I hope that these have been a benefit to you. I know they will if you'll use them. Please take the time to get to know these, to use these, and watch this over and over if you need to. But these will work. They can change your relationship. Again, God wanted marriage to be permanent and be satisfying, and if it's not, stop and see why, deal with the issues. So thank you so much, and God bless.